Hey, Lubbock, Texas, and the South Plains. This is Amanda with Lubbock Area United Way, and this has been a while since we've done one of these where we've interviewed with some of our partners, but we had such great success with that in 2020 that in 2021 we wanted to start doing more of that and share more of what our community partners are doing and more what United Way is working on with our specific priorities. So this morning, we've invited a couple of people to come in and chat with us virtually about a new effort that's happening in Lubbock County around one of our priority areas, which is sex trafficking. So Lubbock County has a new Lubbock County Care Coordination Team, which is something they've been working on with Governor Abbott's office. And so this morning we have Derek Danner, who is the Executive Director for the Children's Advocacy Center of the South Plains, Kristen Murray, who is the Executive Director of Voice of Hope, both of which are community partners for Lubbock Area United Way. And we also have Veronica Lowenberg, who she is the West Texas Regional Administrator for Governor Abbott's Child Sex Trafficking Team. And we practiced that beforehand because that's quite a title, but we're very happy to have Veronica here with us. So just first, thank you guys so much for joining us. And Danner, I'm going to have you kick it off. And Derek, why don't you just tell us a little bit about the care coordination team and what you guys are up to?
Well, we started visiting with the governor's office and Veronica in really the end of 2018 in regards to having a Lubbock County Care Coordination Team for children of sex trafficking. So we've had something similar to that in the past. We had the Sex Trafficking Allied Response Team, but we really never had any guidelines or protocols or anything that had any teeth to go in it and really help the victims further once they were identified. So we started meeting as a group with our care coordination team, and many of them are partners with the Children's Advocacy Center now as our part of our case review meetings and our disciplinary partners in those. And so we started meeting in January, and it's a long process to get everybody's involvement and things. And so we signed that in November. And we hope that this is going to, once we get them identified, or if a child is a clear concern victim for a possibility of being sex trafficked, that we can provide additional resources to the family and the child to keep them, one, to either get them out of the game and not returning to it, or keep them from getting involved in it. And so, we've already got one case that we're looking at now, which was definitely someone that was clear concern, and actually it happened to. So.
Oh, we're very saddened to hear that. I mean, I know none of us want to hear about sex trafficking, especially not with involving children here in our own area, but it is happening. And that's why this care coordination team has been formed and you guys are working on this. Veronica, I want to invite you to jump in and talk a little bit about why these care coordination teams are forming throughout the state, why it's important to the governor's office, and what you guys are hoping to accomplish through these.
Sure, thank you. Well, I mean, child sex trafficking is something that everyone wants to eliminate. We know that it's happening throughout Texas. And so what our office is doing is working with different communities to create these care coordination teams, bringing the community together, law enforcement, service providers, the child advocacy centers together to be able to recognize a child who may be at risk of being trafficked or who is being trafficked, and then be able to coordinate the services that child needs to help them, as Derek mentioned, get out of their situation and heal and flourish and move forward. And so what care coordination is doing is it's bringing everyone together to create a one-door, one-stop where if law enforcement recognizes a youth or a service provider recognizes a youth, they can call the Child Advocacy Center, who is the central hub of care coordination, and tell them we have this youth, and then the Child Advocacy Center kicks in. They do assessments, they refer the youth, they refer the family, they help them, and they get them the help that they need. So it says a lot for Lubbock that all of these entities came together and really for 8 months worked on a protocol, and then is training their respective service providers to make sure that everybody understands what to do when they recognize a child that is being trafficked or at risk of being trafficked. So the Lubbock community worked really hard in establishing this protocol, and they're very dedicated and committed to making it work and to eliminating child sex trafficking in the community.
Thanks so much, Veronica. I think, child sex trafficking, but really sex trafficking, any sort of human trafficking, is not something we want to think about a lot. But it's so scary, but we need to talk about this. We need to protect our kids. We know that this is something that is growing in our community and communities across Texas and communities across the United States. Hey folks, just jumping in here. We had some technical difficulties when we did the first interview with Veronica, and she was not able to join us when we finished up the interview later. So you won't see her throughout the rest of the interview. It'll just be Derek and Kristen. But we wanted to go ahead and share the bit that we did get with her, because we think it's important to put it in the context of what is happening in this entire state, and that these care coordination teams are happening throughout the state. And we are lucky enough to be one of 8 that has now been established. So wanted to make sure that you guys have that full context and that full picture. And now the rest of the interview will continue with just Derek and Kristen. Thanks, guys. Derek, who all is involved in this care coordination team, y'all's agency, and who else?
We're doing Lubbock County to start with, starting small till we kind of get our feet wet in how we're doing. But it'd be the Lubbock Police Department, Lubbock Sheriff's Office, the Department of Public Safety, the Department of Family and Protective Services, Child Pediatrics through Texas Tech University Health Science Center, Forensic Nurse Staffing of West Texas, Voice of Hope, and Voice of Hope has been our child's commercially sexually exploited youth advocate, CSA, for well over a year. And so they're absolutely involved in part of our multidisciplinary team already. So those 8 agencies have come together to form the advisory council, if you will, to review these cases and determine what we need and what services these families need.
I think that's one of the greatest things about this, is that you're really bringing in so many different entities, people that are normally going to be involved anyway, but now you guys are working together specifically to make sure that you're coordinating efforts, and we're not duplicating efforts. We're making sure that kids and families get exactly what they need. Kristen, I want you to jump in because I think there's a lot of information swirling around the world and around the internet about what sex trafficking is and what sex trafficking isn't. And well, specifically when we're talking minors, that can look different from what it looks like with adults. So Kristen, can you give us a brief kind of overview of this is what we're specifically talking about right now?
Sure, I can certainly do that to best of my ability. So trafficking really for us is defined by commercial exploitation. And I think there's a lot of misconception about what's included within the sexual exploitation industry. And so it's important for people to understand that that's escort services, that's strip clubs, that's pornography, that's prostitution. And certainly when we're talking about child sex trafficking, you can't have a child and call them a prostitute because they are not legally old enough to consent to sex. So therefore they are not legally old enough to consent to being sold for sex. And so there's a lot of misconceptions and thoughts out there, but it really comes down to somebody is financially or benefiting from that relationship. And it even can be if somebody is providing a youth with a place to live in exchange for that sex is also considered trafficking, because there is something being exchanged that's giving value. And so there's some different definitions out there, but that's a pretty kind of light definition of what we look at and the different industries that are involved, because it isn't just prostitution. It's very much strip clubs, pornography, all of those things that play into the big greater picture.
Kristen, can you kind of dispel some myths around it too, because I think there's movies like Taken, and there's internet memes of the white van, and there's so many different really myths for the most part. I mean, certainly some of the time it does look like that, but there's a lot of myths out there about how kids end up in being sex trafficked at the beginning. Can you talk a little bit about what it looks like majority of the time, and maybe a few warning signs that parents and caregivers could be on the looking out for?
Absolutely. So we call it part of the grooming process. And while we would like pimps and traffickers not to be smart and creative and good at their skill, unfortunately they are, and they have mastered the skill because it's how they make money. And so they build relationships with people when they're vulnerable. And so studies tell us that the average age somebody is taken into prostitution or sold into trafficking is 12 to 14. And we know our kids are extremely vulnerable during those early teenage years and in their teenage years. And so these predators know that, and they're preying on our kids during this time when they don't trust mom and dad, and they're looking to the internet for their answers and their solutions. And so they're sweeping in and either pretending to be their friend or their boyfriend or anything that they really need. And so you can see recruiters be children of the similar age. You can see girls recruit other girls. You can see guys recruit girls and be their boyfriend and try to take care of them or be their daddy figure. And so it's really about that relationship. And so you made a good point that everybody likes to think that you're kidnapped off the street. It's the creepy white panel van in the store parking lot that everybody's concerned about. And I'm not saying that those people don't mean you harm and that you need to pay attention to your surroundings, but I'm saying that is not what trafficking in Lubbock, Texas looks like. Certainly, could it happen? I'm sure, like all good things, unfortunately, it could. And I'm sure in other areas, maybe around border cities and different things, it looks very differently than what we see in Lubbock. But what we see are relationships being built with somebody who's in a vulnerable state and needs something fulfilled or is food insecure or needs shelter, and they're coming in and offering a solution to that one problem, and then the problem is getting much bigger.
So I think it's good for us to help understand it, and that those circumstances do happen. There are white panel vans that are kidnapping kids. That is happening, but that's not necessarily what it looks like here in Lubbock. And being parents who are involved with our kids, know what our kids are doing online, checking in, and just build us, I think, building a good relationship with our kids, so our kids are comfortable in telling us, hey, this weird thing happened online, and being able to communicate with that. Derek, would you jump back in and talk to us a little bit about, once you have identified that there's a child in the South Plains, in the Lubbock area, who is being sex trafficked, what's the process for that child and for that family?
Well, we will look for a referral from one of our advisory council members. Right now we're starting out with identified victims or clear concern victims. A large part of the sexual traffic kids in the Lubbock area is runaways, a high percentage. They're either running away from something or running to something. And so after the third runaway, you become habitual, and then at times you could be picked up and have to spend time in the youth center. Well, the youth center, those counselors and all out there are trained in what's called the See It tool. And it will rank the kids as to how high of concern they are to be becoming a victim of sex trafficking when they do this. And they don't do this like when they're first. This is when they've built a relationship with the child for like 45, 60 days when they'll do this use the See It tool to give us a score on to, are they clear concern, little concern, or no concern. If they're clear concern, we want to look at those kids, review those cases as well, and see what we can get involved before they get involved. Obviously, we would love to prevent and do prevention. Is cheaper than intervention, right? Because after the fact, it's more things involved. So That's where we're starting with, whether these kids are clear concern or if they've actually been identified as a victim. We can provide the services for the investigative units. We can do the forensic interviewer. We can get them into counseling, and we can do some of those things. But this goes further and beyond that into how can we help the families? What do they need? That the parents may need some education on social media, the platforms. Much like Kristen said, these guys are really, really good at their craft, and they know when law enforcement is catching up on one app, they switch the app, and so it's an ever evolving business, and they're picking on our kids that are vulnerable, one by age, two by their situation. If they're running away, they're lonely, they're scared, they're swooping in, picking them up, providing them with everything they need, just to victimize the kids.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, where entities around the country, around the world really, are making some concerted efforts to raise awareness around human trafficking. That is something that happened, and sex trafficking is one aspect of human trafficking. There's also a labor side of that as well. Kristen, you guys are doing some specific stuff to mark this month and to help raise that awareness here locally. I know next Monday is actually Human Trafficking Awareness Day, and I'm sure a lot of us will be sharing stuff and information on that. Kristen, talk to us about some of the other initiatives that you guys are working on for this month.
Absolutely. So January 11th is National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. We also have a program through Governor Abbott's office that his wife has put together, and there's going to be a week of prayer to work on stopping human trafficking as well. And then you're also going to see some information about what we're calling the Texas Sand Project. And so the goal is to turn Texas blue. And so we have purchased a lot of blue sand, and we will have it in little baggies with some information to give out. And we are looking at January 26th to turn Lubbock blue, just to bring some awareness. People can post to social media. Obviously, we're still very aware of the things going around us, and we won't be gathering in large groups, but it will be something that you can pick up and do at home with your family or at work with your coworkers. And what it is you're just going to take this blue sand and you're going to fill in the cracks on the sidewalk to make a complete surface. And then the blue is going to stand out. And that just kind of signifies that it takes all of us to fill in these cracks for our most vulnerable and the voiceless in our community. And we just want them to know that we see them, we're here for them, and we're going to put a stop to this.
Kristen, you've explained that to me before, but again, just got chills and thinking about all of these cracks filled in our community. And that's literally what we're doing. I guess figuratively, what we are doing is we are filling in cracks. That's what this care team is doing, is filling in the cracks in the system to make sure that survivors of sex trafficking, especially our children survivors, get the support that they need so that they're not cracked and fractured human beings as they become adults. And that is absolutely what you guys are doing. It's what you all been doing on a regular basis. And we're so excited at United Way that there's this team that's coordinating the efforts to really holistically wrap around children and families in this effort. I think none of us want to think about human trafficking and specifically sex trafficking happening in our community. But it is happening in our South Plains communities. It is happening in Lubbock. Kristen, I know you and I have had long conversations about this. We've done trainings on this, and you've come and trained our staff and trained some of the other staff. What messages are you guys really focused on right now and helping people understand what it means when we say there's sex trafficking happening in the South Plains?
I think it's important for everybody to realize that it's happening everywhere. And so people really like to think that it doesn't happen in their small town, it doesn't happen in their neighborhood. But as long as there are buyers, there's going to be somebody selling that product, regardless of what industry we are talking about. And unfortunately, that's really kind of what this comes down to. If people aren't buying sex, then people aren't going to be lured into the sex industry, for lack of a better word. And it's just something that I hear all the time in our conversations, and I'm sure Derek does as well. People just really still don't think that it happens in America as much as we say it does. And then they certainly don't think, that it happens in Lubbock. And Lubbock has a lot of great things, and I'm a big proponent of Lubbock and all of the things we have going on, but we're the hub city. We're the hub city for retail and for education and for medical services. It isn't very far-fetched to think that we're also the hub city for this. And so unfortunately, where there's going to be demand, there is also going to be supply.
Unfortunately, yeah. There's also going to be supply where there's demand. That's economics that we grew up learning in middle school and high school, right? That's how systems work. Human Trafficking Awareness Day, Human Trafficking Awareness Month. I think you go back to that old knowledge is power. We start with awareness in any issue that we're working on. We start with just raising awareness and helping people understand that it is happening in our community, it is happening in our world, in our nation. Derek, Kristen, either one of you guys jump in. As people start thinking about this, as we have a growing need for people to be thinking about this, but also doing, how can people who are wanting to raise awareness and wanting to end sex trafficking, what can people do? How can they help?
Danner, I'll jump in and then you can talk if you would like to. First, you have to acknowledge that it's here. And then if everybody, we don't all have to do the same thing, but we all have to do something. And so even if that's just talking to your children, your nieces, your nephews, your church group, you have to start small and be willing to admit that this could happen to somebody that you love. And it's not a certain side of Lubbock that this is affected by. This happens all over Lubbock, and it's happening with our kids, happens with our young adults, it happens with adults, that there's a vulnerability there and they're being exploited with that vulnerability. And so we've got to talk to each other and know when people need things and offer them help before it becomes a problem. And I'm pretty sure Derek said earlier, prevention is key. I mean, we all will run in circles and get you everything you need if this is something that's happened to you, and we want to offer you hope, and we're going to give you the pieces that you need to get your life back to a healthy space, but it's not going to be something we can ever take away. And so if we can keep a young person, or any person for that matter, from going down this path, that's certainly the more attractive solution for us. And so we definitely want to keep people from getting trapped by people or feeling like they're trapped. And sometimes the kids get exploited very easily because they get blackmailed. They get into a situation that they can't get out of, and they're afraid to talk to their parents about it. And so open conversations, you've got to be a place that hopefully when your kids have a problem, they come to you and not to the internet or their 12-year-old friend to try to solve a situation that could affect the rest of their life. And so I think for us, it's really about offering hope if this does happen to you, that tomorrow is better. Like, we can start over, we can start fresh, we can help you with that process. It's going to be a hard road, but it's going to be a road worth traveling, and that we will be there right alongside you.
I would just echo what Kristen has said. We want to provide the family as well as the victims coping skills to be able to move forward in their lives and to help avoid the potholes that go with this. These child victims are provided in many instances things that they never had in the past. And they are basically, they get, infatuated with these perpetrators, and they just tease their mind and think that this is the way that they need to be, and that they care for them forever. They have no care for the kids. It's a product, and when that product is gone, taken away, they will go find another to become another product in their line of business. So we have to make everybody aware of that. We have to help these families. We have to give them the coping mechanisms to move forward. And all the other advisory council members are excited. there's only 8 other care coordination teams in the state. Lubbock is the first and only one in West Texas right now. Some of the other centers are working towards that, but they have not gotten to the point we're at. So we are already working with and providing services for one family, and we just got these guidelines in effect in November. So we all want to make a difference in these families' lives, and we want to get this prevented, and we want to get our community aware that it's here. It's always been here. It's been here for a while. Sometimes it's hard to see, but sometimes it's not. And we all can't, we can't do it all, but we all can do something. And that's what we need to remember.
Eric, I just want to harp back to that. There's only eight care coordination teams in the entire state of Texas, and we get to be one of them. We get to be one of those front runners, setting the stage of this is how this thing can work and how it can work well, and it can work well for children and families. And I think that just speaks, that's such a testimony to who we are on the South Plains and the great way that our service agencies work together consistently on all sorts of issues. And it's just a great testimony to how we're working together on the South Plains. And, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this and you're thinking, I'm not sure if I have the relationship with my kid that I can make that connections, we've got services that are providing those prevention services. We reach out to the Parenting Cottage. They have great parent education programs. Family counseling services provides wonderful family counseling. There are so many ways that we can prevent this. And the first step is just saying, it's hard to be a parent and I want to be a better parent. And here's some places that can help me do that. So anything, Kristen, Derek, that you guys would like to add to this conversation?
Well, this care coordination allows us to bring in other United Way partner agencies that have not been a part of the investigative process or involved in the multidisciplinary team for the Children's Advocacy Center. So this allows us to, once we get that release of information, to enlist all these great organizations that provide services in the city and in our community to help get involved, to get an answer to these questions and to help us prevent this.
I think it's important for people to know too, if they have questions and they don't know where to start, just pick up the phone and call one of us. The Children's Advocacy Center, Voice of Hope, really probably any of the United Way agencies, and ask your question. And if we don't know the answer to it, we will find you the answer. And even if we can't provide that service, I have a great staff that has resources from all over the city. We can find you where you need to be. And so if that first obstacle is you don't know who to call, I encourage them just to call somebody. I promise you the agency that they call is going to figure out who best can serve them, and we will point them in the right direction.
You guys both just said it so well. I mean, that's the whole point of United Way community partners being networked together. That's the whole point of so many have been agencies outside of that being networked together. And we saw how effective that was in the last year, as so many nonprofits partnered together with other service organizations like the police department, like the hospitals, to really do some amazing things in the midst of a global crisis. But this is an ongoing crisis that we have in our community, and this kind of coordination is happening on a regular basis. And we're just so appreciative of both of you and your teams and all the ways that you are working out in collaborative spaces to really take care of our kids, take care of our families, and take care of our communities as a whole. So thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you for having us and doing a story on this. The team has worked really hard. The governor's office has been with us every step of the way and will remain with us for the next year. It's a start. It's not an end. We will get better at this. We will hopefully be able to reach out further in Lubbock County in the future and start incorporating the other counties that we serve. I know that we serve Lubbock County and surrounding 14 counties, and I know Kristen is currently working, if she hadn't already got the commercially sexually exploited youth CSA position in several more counties, including some counties that have CACs that are trying to get their protocols and guidelines up.
Absolutely. So Lubbock County Court Care Coordination, that's a tongue twister for me, is working with Lubbock County. But like Derek said, we work with so many surrounding counties that if you are outside of Lubbock County and hearing this video because somebody shared it and you need information, again, just call one of us. We have great resources with other counties. Currently, Voice of Hope is offering CSA services to Lubbock and the surrounding 20 counties. So we have a pretty far reaching grasp at this point. And if we can't provide your services and you happen to be in a county that's not in our jurisdiction, we will find you somebody who is. So please don't let any of those be barriers. If you've heard anything that we've said and it was a red flag to you, just reach out to one of us and we will point you in the right direction gladly.
Again, Danner, Kristen, thank you guys so much. We appreciate you guys and all that you're doing and your teams. South Plains, thank you guys for being engaged with us around Human Trafficking Awareness Month and Human Trafficking Awareness Day on the 11th. You can help. You can start by sharing this video or asking somebody to sit down and watch it with you. You can help spread the word that this is happening in our community. We will put a link to both the Children Advocacy Center and Voice of Hope, their websites in the post, as well as their phone numbers so that you can reach out to them. If you've got some of those questions and are just looking where to start, we're going to make that easy for you by putting it in the post. We will be back soon with more information from our community partners and the things that are happening around in the South Plains. But thank you guys and have a great day.